Welcome everybody to the last webinar of the term here at BINA. Please God, we will continue after the Chagim, after the festival period has finished. So what's more important, fasting or praying? Obviously, we are talking about the holy day of Yom Kippur, which Jews will be celebrating next week on Wednesday. Of course, fasting is a key part of the day, but of course, so is prayer. So let's say I can't do both. I can either fast or pray. Either I fast and I spend the day sleeping off the fast in bed, or I eat something and then only then I will have strength to come to shul and to daven. Which one is more important? Should I eat and go to shul, or should I fast and stay in bed? Obviously, if you can do both, that's better, but the question is if you can only do one of them. So at first, you might think that prayer is more important. Fasting, you might say, is there to facilitate the prayer. It's there to not be distracted by physical desires or eating or drinking. Therefore, we fast in order that our minds should be clear to pray. So therefore, if that's the case, then if fasting is not helping my prayer, but only damaging it, it is stopping me from praying, you might think to say that let's forget the fasting and let's go to shul to pray. However, that is the incorrect answer. Relative to fasting, prayer is actually a lot less important on Yom Kippur. Fasting is an absolute must. However, I must add that the only exception to that is if somebody is very sick and it is dangerous to fast, then and only then one is exempt and does not have to fast. One should consult a doctor and a rabbi if that case might arise on Yom Kippur. However, on a regular case, normally, fasting is an absolute must. If you can pray, then that's great. But if you are unable to pray due to the fact that you are fasting, because you are tired, you have to go home and spend the day in bed and fast. Now, that is the true answer, but the question is why? How uninspirational. What am I achieving by being in pain with a lot of discomfort, lying in bed and doing absolutely nothing? Wouldn't Yom Kippur be more inspiring if I just had that drink and went to shul to pray? Allow me to share with you a personal experience. Last year, we were still living in Melbourne and we flew to Sydney for me to be the chazan at BINA on Yom Kippur. Erev Yom Kippur, on the day before Yom Kippur, I woke up with a fever and a very, very sore throat. I managed to drag myself to Kol Nidrei, to Yom Kippur night at shul, croaked my way through the davening, but by the time the next morning came around, I simply could not get out of bed to come to shul. I spent the entire day of Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, in bed, barely managing to pray the bare minimum amount of prayers that a person is required to pray on Yom Kippur. You might say, that's a horrible Yom Kippur, right? Wrong. In fact, in retrospect, I probably never experienced such a Yom Kippur like that in my life. Hopefully never will again. But I was given a gift of discovering what Yom Kippur is really all about. Getting down to the essence of the day of what Yom Kippur is all about, the depth of this holy day. Let's explain. The Kabbalists tell us that the Jewish soul is comprised of 5 levels. The first one in Hebrew is called nefesh. That refers to the level of behavior, our thoughts, speech, and action, the way we act, the way we think, the way we speak, the way we are practically. That is the level of nefesh. Number 2 is the level of ruach. Ruach is our emotions, the way we feel, what we love, what we fear. Neshama is the third one. That's our intellectual capacity, the fact that we can think, the fact that we can understand. All those 3 above mentioned levels or layers of the soul, so to speak, are all conscious. It's what we live with on a daily basis. The fourth level is called in Hebrew chaya. Chaya is the subconscious level of the soul, those deep desires that a person has which are illogical, transcend logic, beyond any reason or even emotion. These types of desires only come out in special occasions and need something very deep to arouse that within the person and bring it out. We'll get to the fifth level in a second, but let's just ask the following question. Where does our relationship with God start? On which level does our Judaism begin? Are we Jewish because we act Jewish? Because we behave like a Jew should, that we keep all of the commandments that it says in the Torah, whether it's in thought or speech or action? Or is it that we are Jewish because we feel Jewish? Is our connection to God because we love and we fear God? Or is our connection to godliness because we comprehend some deep levels of godliness? We understand God on an intellectual level. Or is it even that it begins from a deep subconscious desire to serve God, that desire is always there? Is that what makes us Jewish? Which level of these four levels is the beginning, is where it starts? And the answer is none of the above. Of course, it's vital to act like a Jew. Of course, it's important to feel Jewish and to develop a love and fear of God and His Torah. Of course, it's important to use our minds to study the Torah and to understand the godliness. And of course, it's always important to discover the inner deep desires that we have to live as a Jew. But that's not where it begins. That's not the cause of us being Jewish. That's not what defines us as Jews. What makes us Jewish, what connects us to God, is what we are. We are godliness. I don't only act godly. I don't only feel godly. I don't only understand godliness, and I don't only want God. We as Jews are a part of God. As the Zohar tells us that the Jewish soul is a chelek eleka mimal, is a part of God above. We are godliness. This is our definition. This is the fifth level, the yechida. The word yechida in Hebrew means to be one. This is the level of our soul. This is the I. This is our very essence. This is our very identity. What is our identity? Our identity is godliness. Prayer is all about inspiration. To inspire us to do what God wants. To inspire us, to arouse within us an emotion to God, a love or a fear to God. Prayer is the time to meditate, to contemplate God's greatness on an intellectual level. Prayer is definitely a time to reawaken the inner desires that we have to serve God and to live as God wants us to. But that's all that prayer is. Yom Kippur is not about inspiration. Yom Kippur is about identification. We reveal on Yom Kippur the essence of our soul, which is one entity with God, which is why Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. How does a day atone? The day atones because on the day of Yom Kippur it is revealed the essence of our neshama, the essence of our soul, which sin never reached there to begin with. It is always clean, it is always pure, and it is always godly because that is what it is. This idea is expressed through fasting. Fasting brings out that our life is not physical. We can live, we can exist purely of godliness. For one day a year, we have the opportunity to live with our true identity, which is godliness. We don't need food. We don't need physical means to live because we are not physical people, in essence. In the deepest parts of our soul, what defines us is not that we are a physical human. What defines us is that we have a soul, which is literally a part of God Himself. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, prayer is important on Yom Kippur. Prayer takes a very central stage on Yom Kippur. We spend the entire day praying in Shul. We pray 5 prayers, more than any other day of the year. That's because the prayer on Yom Kippur is all about that we can now live with that identity. We won't only be Jewish, we will live as a Jew. Fasting allows us to discover our identity. Praying on Yom Kippur allows us to live with that identity. Prayer will inspire us to take that spark of God which is within us and to allow that spark to shine in our desires, in our intellect, in our emotions, and of course the main thing is in our behavior. Prayer is all about inspiring us to live that way, but it doesn't begin until we start fasting, because fasting allows us to discover that very identity. Fasting has another unbelievable benefit. Fasting brings out, this may sound funny, but fasting brings out the ultimate Jewish unity. When we eat, or when we do something, we are all different. Everybody eats on different levels. Some people eat with more physical intention because they enjoy their food. Great righteous people eat in order to derive the spiritual energy in the food, or in order to serve God better. We are all on different levels when we are doing things, for example, eating. However, not eating, not drinking, we're all the same. There's no difference between the way I don't eat and the way Moses didn't eat. In not doing something, we are all equal. It brings out the ultimate Jewish unity. Now, the truth is, this is not a separate point from everything we have been speaking about, because this goes hand in hand. Where do the differences start? In the four levels. In our desires, in our intellect, how much we understand God, how much we feel an emotional connection to Him. Of course, in our behaviors, we are all different. But in our very identity, in the depths of our soul, we are all one. There's no differences between the greatest Jew and, so to speak, the lowest. There's no difference. In our very essence, we are all connected to God equally. That's why in Yom Kippur we fast. We fast to bring that out. And we fast to bring out that on that day, on Yom Kippur, we all stand as one nation in front of God. So while I was lying in bed doing absolutely nothing and just fasting and hurting, I was actually discovering who I am. I am a Jew. I am standing on Yom Kippur, or lying down on Yom Kippur, united with all the other Jews around the world as one entity, as one nation, all connected to one God. This Yom Kippur, I hope to be inspired about it as well. So this Yom Kippur, discover your Jewish identity by fasting. Discover your Jewish identity by not eating and drinking. Discover that you are really one with the person sitting next to you in shul, because both of you are doing the exact same thing in the exact same way. Both of you are not eating and not drinking. Hopefully, we will all be healthy enough and well enough to actually come to shul on Yom Kippur, besides for fasting. Pray, throw yourself into the machzor, throw yourself into the prayers, and inspire yourself with that identity. That we should not only be Jewish, we shouldn't only be connected to God, but we should also live that way. We should also live as Jews, doing what God says, feeling an emotional connection to God, understanding godliness, and wanting to be a Jew and wanting to serve God. Just want to end off once again with a disclaimer that, of course, when it comes to a dangerous situation, if in any way fasting is a threat to a person's health, then one should consult a doctor and a rabbi, because in some cases the Torah itself obligates us not to fast on Yom Kippur. Wishing all of our viewers a Gmar Chsima Tova. May you all be sealed. We have already been written on Rosh Hashanah for a good year, but may you all be sealed for a good year, a healthy year, a happy year, and a Jewish year. Have a great day.